In 2006, a man by the name of Justin Verlander would burst into the baseball scene in dramatic fashion. After a rough couple of major league outings to end 2005, Verlander was much better in 2006. In his rookie season, Verlander made 30 starts and threw 186 innings with a 3.63 ERA, helping lead the Detroit Tigers to 95 wins and all the way to the World Series, one in which they'd lose in 5 to the St. Louis Cardinals. 2007 was his first All-Star appearance, throwing over 200 innings with a 3.66 ERA. As for 2008, it wasn't pretty. Verlander went on to throw over 200 innings again, but this time to an ERA way north of 4 and near 5, losing the most games in all of baseball that season with 17 losses. Well, say goodbye to that Justin Verlander, because we would never see him again, at least not for a very long time. 2009 was the beginning of Verlander's Hall of Fame campaign. Seriously. In 2009, he'd throw the most innings in baseball at 240 with a 3.45 ERA, striking out 269 hitters, the most in baseball, and finishing third in the American League Cy Young race. He was incredible, and he would only get better. In 2010, he'd throw 224 and a third more innings with a 3.37 ERA. And then there was 2011, perhaps his greatest season ever. In that season, Verlander threw 251 innings, the most in baseball. He won 24 games, the most in baseball, struck out 250 hitters, the most in baseball, became an All-Star for the 4th time, won the American League Cy Young Award and the American League MVP Award. It was one of the greatest seasons pitching-wise in baseball history, and 2012 was mostly more of the same, throwing 238 and a third innings with a 2.64 ERA, striking out the most hitters in baseball yet again at 239, and finished second in the Cy Young voting. At this point, the Tigers didn't need to see any more before giving him a big contract, which is exactly what they did. Before the 2013 season, the Tigers and Verlander agreed to a 7-year, $180 million contract, making him the highest paid pitcher in MLB history at the time. Verlander was never that great of a postseason pitcher before 2012, pitching poorly in the 2006 and 2011 playoffs, but Justin started his October dominance in 2012, something I'm sure helped lead to his big contract. In Game 1 against the 94-win Oakland A's, Verlander threw 7 innings, struck out 11 hitters, and gave up just 1 run. He wasn't even that great overall for his standards, walking 4 hitters as well. The series ended up getting pushed to 5 games, with the decisive Game 5 being in front of a rowdy Oakland Coliseum. And who took the mound? None other than Justin Verlander. Verlander had huge balls that night, striking out 11 hitters again, walking only 1 hitter this time, giving up only 4 hits and going the distance, throwing a 9-inning complete game shutout to help advance his Tigers to the ALCS. Despite only recording 3 strikeouts in his next start in the ALCS, he'd pitched into the 9th inning in Game 3 against the Yankees, giving up only a single run. The Tigers swept the Yankees, moved on to the World Series. Verlander struggled in his only start, allowing 5 runs on 6 hits, 2 of which were home runs by Pablo freaking Sandoval, who'd actually hit 3 that game, and the Giants went on to sweep the Tigers. Regardless, it was still a great and memorable season for Verlander and his team, with him of course getting the big contract soon thereafter. 2013 featured another dominant season by Verlander, as he threw 218 and a third innings with a 3.46 ERA, making the most starts in baseball, striking out 214 hitters, helping lead the Tigers back to the postseason. And who would they face in the division series again? Oakland. Oakland actually ended up taking a commanding 2-1 series lead heading into Game 4, having a chance to close out the series, this time in Detroit. After taking an early 3-0 lead, the Tigers came back and won the game, forcing a Game 5 back in Oakland for the 2nd year in a row. Not good for the A's, considering we all know who they'd have to face again in that decisive game: Justin Verlander. Verlander went out and basically played Groundhog Day, doing almost the exact same thing he did the year prior. He didn't go all 9 this time around, but he did throw 8 shutout innings, struck out 10, walked 1, and gave up just 2 hits in a 3-0 win. The Tigers ended up losing to the eventual World Series winning Boston Red Sox, but it wasn't Verlander's fault, as he'd only pitched 1 game that series and it was a good one, throwing 8 innings and allowing just 1 run on a Mike Napoli home run to left center field. The Tigers lost that game 1-0 and the series in 6. 2014 wasn't the Justin Verlander we all know and love, considering his ERA was 4.5 despite throwing well over 200 innings again. 2015 featured Verlander's first ever appearance on the disabled list, as he would start the year there hurt with a right tricep strain. He'd later make his way back and throw just over 133 innings with a 3.38 ERA, but by 2016 he was back to being a horse, throwing over 200 innings for the 9th time in his career, struck out the most hitters in the American League, all with a 3.08 ERA. And then came 2017. Now, Justin Verlander's career is a bit weird in a sense where he's had multiple times of having a down spurt like he did in 2014, but 2017 was for a little different of a reason. Verlander wasn't bad in 2017 with the Tigers by any means, but he wasn't the same, clearly. He threw 174 innings with a 3.82 ERA and a fielding independent pitching over 4. That's pretty solid, but for a guy like Justin Verlander, you expect him to be way better. But with him not getting any younger at age 34, you had to think that this might have been the beginning of the end. Just before the August 31st waiver trade deadline at midnight, like minutes before, the Tigers struck a deal with the Astros, sending Verlander off to Houston for 3 prospects in return. Justin Verlander has arguably been the greatest pitcher in baseball ever since. In the month of September in 2017, Verlander threw 34 innings in 5 starts with a 1.06 ERA, striking out 43 hitters. As for the postseason, he'd make 5 more starts, throw 36 and 2/3 innings, all with a 2.21 ERA in October as the Astros went on to win the World Series. In 2018, at his age 35 season, Verlander threw 214 innings with a 2.52 ERA, striking out 290 hitters, the most in the American League, winning 16 games and helping lead Houston back to the postseason, one which would see them fall to the eventual World Series winning Red Sox, going on to end up finishing second in the American League Cy Young voting. Verlander saw that, scoffed, and then pitched one of the greatest seasons of his career, perhaps the best. In 2019, Justin Verlander made the most starts in baseball with 34, threw the most innings in baseball at 223, struck out 300 hitters, became an All-Star for the 8th time, threw a no-hitter, finished 11th in the MVP voting, and won the American League Cy Young Award on a 107-win Houston Astros team that would lose in 7 games to the Washington Nationals in the World Series. Although he pitched good to start off October of 2019, he didn't finish very strong. In fact, he got owned at one point. I think it's safe to say that after 2012 and 2013 that Justin Verlander owns the Oakland Athletics, and I'm sure their fans would even agree as well. Nobody else has ever really owned Verlander in his career, not any team really or player. That is until the 2019 World Series. It was Game 6 and the Astros were 1 win away from their 2nd championship in 3 years, with the score all knotted up with the Nationals at 2, and the newly 21-year-old Juan Soto stepped up to the plate. After a pitch inside and out of the zone to Soto would do his little shuffle. Verlander was not a fan, yelling out to Soto, "Not here, not here," basically telling him, "You're in my house, you're barely able to drink, and you're not going to do that to a veteran like me on the mound." Soto looked back, shook his head, and did the most perfect thing he could. On the very next pitch, another fastball up and in, the barely legally able to drink Juan Soto would send Verlander's pitch deep into the second deck of Minute Maid Park, giving the Nationals a 1-run lead in a game and series they ended up winning, taking down Verlander and his Astros. This then led into perhaps the darkest chapter of Justin Verlander's career. It wasn't long after that World Series when the world found out the truth behind the Houston Astros, as it was revealed that they cheated throughout the 2017 season and during their World Series run, along with part of 2018. At least that's what the report found. Now, Verlander himself didn't cheat, because the big cheating going on was the Houston hitters stealing signs, but Verlander was perhaps the biggest hypocrite during all of this. In 2017, before he joined the Astros, Verlander said these exact words. Quote, "It's not about gamesmanship anymore. It used to be, hey, if you can get my signs, good for you. In the past, if a guy on second base was able to decipher it on a few pitches, I guess that was kind of part of the game. I think it's on a different level now. It's not good." End quote. Well, it turns out that Verlander ended up joining the very thing he swore to destroy. And when it was revealed to the public what was going on, Verlander pretty much shut his mouth about the entire thing, other than when he cracked a joke about it during the Baseball Writers Association of America when he accepted his 2019 Cy Young Award. In his speech, Verlander joked that the Astros were quote-unquote technologically and analytically advanced. Verlander has quite of a history of being a little hypocritical. And this isn't a crap on Justin Verlander segment or me acting like he's so much worse than all of us, because he's not. We can all be hypocrites at times. But I think the worst hypocritical moment for JV was when he practically turned a blind eye to his Astros acquiring known domestic abuser Roberto Osuna in 2019. A video had surfaced the internet of an Astros minor leaguer beating up his then girlfriend earlier that same year. He was immediately released by the team, and Justin Verlander was very vocal about it, tweeting, quote, "F you, man. I hope the rest of your life without baseball is horrible. You deserve all that is coming your way." End quote. Now, those words are of course justified by Verlander, but why not have the same attitude toward Osuna later that year? It's not necessarily the easiest position to be in, sure. He's not in the front office and he's not an owner of the team, but he does have a voice and chose not to align it with the same tone he had months prior with an Astros minor league player. So as good as 2019 was for Verlander, it led into the worst of his career in 2020, and that's largely because he was only able to make one start in that shortened season before having to get Tommy John surgery and not pitching for the rest of 2020 or any of 2021. He of course didn't have any memorable on-field moments in 2021, but there was one pretty interesting story that did come out. Verlander was apparently picked out by Astros owner Jim Crane to throw out the first pitch before one of the Astros playoff games against the Chicago White Sox. Okay, seems all good and innocent, right? Well, it never ended up happening. Why? Because the Astros players said no. According to reports, Astros players went to Crane and told him that they did not want him to throw out the first pitch because he hadn't been there all year, and there was no reason to spotlight him now. This is pretty intriguing. It's not like Verlander was in any off-the-field trouble and it would have been a bad look or anything. He was just hurt and not able to pitch. But Astros players felt strongly enough that he should have been with the team at least somewhat throughout the year, supporting them, rejecting their owner's decision for the first pitch. Well, the drama seems to all be over now, as Verlander was able to come back from Tommy John and start the year with the team. As far as how he's doing pitching-wise this year, he's picked up right where he left off in 2019. In 2022 so far, the now 39-year-old Justin Verlander has thrown over 120 innings with an ERA below 2. He's throwing as hard as ever, locating as good as ever, pitching as good as ever, and is in the American League Cy Young conversation. Again, let me remind you that he is in his age 39 season, yet he's pitching like he's 25. It's incredible to see, and he's sure making his $25 million salary for this season worth every cent up until this point. Justin Verlander is a sure Hall of Fame pitcher, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. His career numbers are off the charts. Yes, he's had a couple poor seasons throughout his career, but that's literally it, just a couple in 17 seasons. He's been one of the best pitchers in the sport for over a decade now, and after looking like he was on the decline in 2017, he got traded to Houston and had a resurgence, and has failed to look back since. You can say the spider tax stuff helped him in some of his time in Houston. Sure, it helped Garrett Cole and so many others in the league, but they have since cracked down hard on that kind of stuff, yet Verlander is still pitching like he's in his prime. It's rare to see any player nearing 40 years old provide as much value to a team as Verlander has. It's insane, but he's done it, proving that despite some of the obstacles he's faced in his career, Justin Verlander has prevailed and will be in Cooperstown sooner than later.